So on the point of, you mentioned the Lions and how they will prepare for the first test. This isn't mailbag, but I do want to reference this question, which I haven't got to for a few weeks, from Rugby Domain, who asked about the fact the Lions play 6 games before the Wallabies' first test, and the Wallabies only play 1, being Fiji. So when you talk about performance and how we work back from winning a series 3-0, it becomes a juggling act of when Joe uses players, how he picks the team for Fiji, what players he allows to play for their state sides. There's already a sticking point with the Waratahs game against the Lions being the night before the Wallabies play Fiji. Is one Wallabies match in the lead up to that first series leaving us a little underdone, Hoops?
You'd love 3 Wallabies test matches somewhere against teams, wouldn't you? You'd love a perfect, but that's not the reality. You got 1. So how he breaks that down, I know, rewinding 12 years ago now to when the Lions came out, we were in camp and I was watching the Waratahs play over in Perth. And they were playing, I think there was still a Force game to be played. So it was Waratahs v Force. Super Rugby was still going and we were in camp. So I think that's right. Does that sound right? I remember...
You missed a Waratahs Super Rugby
missed a Waratahs Super Rugby game in camp.
It was truncated.
Yeah, because remember it was tighter because Super Rugby would run longer.
Well, it actually stopped in between. You kept going after the
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. We still had the Reds. We had 1 game post that Lions series, which is weird, right? Yeah. So what's right in this situation? Again, it comes back to we're not on the inside. We've got opinions. Now, I think what should happen is we've got 1 game. Yes, you've got these Super Rugby games, but we're going to use, hopefully with, not injuries or certain things happening, that we're using 26 guys, 27, maybe 30 in these 3 games. So those guys, I would all aim up for Fiji. I'd throw the best possible team that we've got, and I wouldn't focus on the outcome of that game. I'd focus
best possible 23.
Who am I going to play against in Test 1 against the Lions? I'd start that 23, and I wouldn't focus on the outcome. And this would be a challenge for coaching staff. And I'd actually love to ask Joe and his crew this question. But do you prepare for Fiji, or do you play that game? Because Fiji's a very different team to how the Lions are going to play. So do you prepare for Fiji to beat Fiji, or do we prepare how we want to beat the Lions and play that? And regardless of outcome, we're headstrong on what that looks like in that game. That would be a really great question. I mean, what do you think, Googie?
That's a great catch-22, because if you lose that game against Fiji,
don't mind.
But publicly, it's not a great look. They will come in for huge criticism if they lose that test, and there'll be big question marks about the series if they lose that test against Fiji.
I'd be surprised if a game plan that's designed to beat the British and Irish Lions can't beat Fiji.
Point
there
taken.
You go, Goog, you've just cursed us. But what you're going to need to go 3-0 against the British and Irish Lions is consistency, lack of injury. You're going to have as close to your best 15 on the field, which means that some things you can't control are going to ultimately interfere with it. But your game plan around power base, winning the ball, advancing the ball, winning collisions, the arm wrestle of international Northern Hemisphere rugby is going to be required. Absolutely, your best 23 needs to take the field against Fiji to be building that cohesion and IP together as a follow-on from experience, but also there are going to be new combinations. The thing I will say is I think that this notion that we need more tests to prepare, I think the advantage, it is what it is, the advantage that this group has got, and I've touched on it on the show before, there's a whole library of the British and Irish Lions preparing. So here's a question for British and Irish Lions coaches. Do they prepare to beat the provinces with a provincial game plan, or are they preparing for the Wallabies to beat the Wallabies and win 3-0?
And with which players?
Because, if they're not preparing to beat the Wallabies, sorry, what are you doing? So then, the people in the squad get to watch these games, forensically analyse 12 different camera angles from 6 different games of what they can expect. They can pick consistency as well. That's a similar theme. That's a similar strategy inside 22. Themes are going to emerge over 6 games. So first test, whilst you don't have the doing part, you're going to be full of IP part for Wallabies, and that's the skill of a captain to get that together and get that energy and release it.
Could I just say, I'm not suggesting that we're going to win 3-0.
No, we want to.
That's what you're working back.
But that's where you're working back from.
Yeah, absolutely.
That should be the goal.
Okay.
100%.
And can I just say, just in the preparation thing, I have to, because history is important in this. We played as a warm-up game as the Wallabies, the Sunny Coast team
Stingrays?
Maybe the Stingrays.
The team that used to be in the Premier Rugby competition.
Torrential rain. Like torrential rain. We played, I think, two 30 minutes or something, rolled out different teams. That was our Wallaby warm-up into that.
Yeah, right.
And I remember Sida Taleki running a 60-metre one try, and that didn't happen in the test. But the great thing of what I think, RA have managed to do is get a legitimate test for our guys heading into this game. I think that's really good, and I think that's as good a prep as you can hope for in this situation.
Can you imagine the bloke looking at Sida Tamani going, just bags not?
Well,
there's about 5 bags not.
You know what I love about it is the fact, as a player, I remember that Sunny Coast going, I better not bloody get injured.
Yeah.
Whereas the Fiji one, it's like, okay, we play these guys in Drua. We know this is proper. Yeah. We haven't played them since the World Cup. This is on, and that's a good preparation for a player.
It does also speak to this squad, right? 40, let's say, down to 32, down to probably a nucleus of 27. They're going to be your hot bodies. Releasing some of them for provincial games, and how far out do you put them at risk? I'll go right back in time to 01. There were Herberts, Nathan Greys, healthy starting players playing in those provincial games.
So here's the thing.
Also, maybe you get a bit of cheat activity there as well.
I think just by the schedule and the circumstances that they're going into with preparing for this test, I don't think it's going to be like any tour that we've seen before. So already...
In what way?
Well, already I reckon tomorrow they're going to say, because the Force play the Lions effectively a week later, it's the following Saturday, right? You've got guys who are going to be in this squad from the Western Force, and Joe said, we will look to quarantine a group of players and then we'll leave a bunch of players in Perth to play the Lions, right? So they're not going to get guys, fly them all the way over here, meet up, do a few days training, then fly home. So already tomorrow he's going to be saying, this guy are coming across and they're staying here. So we're going to find out already who are high-value players and who are already ring-fenced. So he will be prioritising a training week with the Wallabies over the potential for some of these guys to be back playing for the Force, because it just won't work. You have to have one or the other. And it will be probably the same for Queensland, which is the following Wednesday, right? He's going to prioritise, like you're saying, go in hard with that best team against Fiji. Those guys won't be seen. They will just keep training all the way through till that week. And, the guys you might see coming back into play against the Lions will be players 30 to 40 sort of thing.
Well, the interesting thing, just going back to what Goog said about 2001, I've gone back and looked at some of the team lineups and compared those provincial matches versus the team the Wallabies named for the first test. And someone like Nathan Gray played for Australia A in Gosford, which you played for, Goog, and then 11 days later was named and started in the first test. Dan Herbert, Nick Stiles, Toto Kefu all played for the Reds 14 days before the first test and were all named to start in the first test.
It was crazy.
So that's your Fiji test, isn't it? Really? 7 days?
Yeah.
Some of those
aren't remarkable times.
No,
I think the trouble is going to be, what about the third string 10? With the Reds game, for example. The night before the Reds play. It's the Reds then Newcastle. Is that right?
Yeah. Or the Tars play the night before.
Oh yeah. So games like that. You've got players 4 days before. You've got players coming in, coming out. That causes a little bit of disruption in the camp.
That leads me to questioning. You've said, and everyone I think on the panel has sort of gone with the same idea, is you pick your best 23 to play that Fiji test, just give them as much time together because that's the team you're planning on picking for the test one. But if you've got a Lungy Gleeson, for instance, let's say hypothetically, who he expects he'll pick on the bench in his best 23, but Lungy hasn't played a game since the end of May.
Yeah, and it's the same with the
Force. He's going to get 15 minutes off the bench against Fiji on the Sunday. Is he better served playing 60 to 70 the night before for the Waratahs?
Well, yeah, I think that the staff have had a long time to look at this. Yeah. And having an individual player plan is really important. So maybe a Lungy Gleeson can leave camp the night before, roll out against the Waratahs and brain it. Maybe he's a player that can do that. But then there's some players that might not be able to do that. Or is that player leaving going to create too much of a void in the group for them to train 15 on 15? Like, these are all discussions. And I think, I just want to add, I think we're in a really great place with someone like Joe, who's worked in an environment that has managed players so well for so long. So we're not looking at, we don't have to burn the candle for some players. I think he's going to look at each player individually and see where they can fit. Yep, some might be able to fly over from Perth, fly back. And I mean, physically you can do it. Some players mentally might not be able to do it. And I think he's going to have a really good grasp. And I hope that he has a really good grasp on, say a Lungy Gleeson's a great example. Yeah, let's play him, because he's going to really get a chance to run at these guys, build a heap of confidence for him personally, and then carry that into Test match if he's picked.
Or his role is to come off the bench as a Wallabies player and inject himself into the game, which is very different to being a starting player and getting as many minutes as you can in a sky blue jersey. It's a different mindset. It's a different acceleration into game, different familiarity, very different game plan, and different skill set of people around you. As a coach, you would want to. What are the controllables? You release Lungy Gleeson to the Waratahs, you lose a little bit of control over his mindset and his skill development and his game plan that he's involved in and his treatment, irrespective of the relationship between Dan and Joe. You're handing over your valuable resource. I would think that I'm far better controlling what I can control. Lungy Gleeson may play 79 minutes. The person in front of him may get injured in that test. So we're not saying he's only going to play 15. He's ready to play 80, but he's very ready to be a Wallaby, starting in the 23 Wallaby to take on the British and Irish Lions. And this is my validation for Lungy Gleeson, because I want him on the bench. We're picking names here, right?
Yeah, hypothetically, of course.
That's the other part I would look at as a coach. I would want to know where all the moving chess pieces are, and I want them all in the hotel in bed by midnight, and I want them getting ready, drinking the Kool-Aid for the test campaign as soon as possible.
I think a bygone era getting them in bed.
And they know how to play.
Might not have been.
They're fit enough. They know how to play.
That's actually the interesting thing these days, is they just are quite confident to train for a couple of weeks and then play a test match, right? That used to not necessarily be the case. You wanted to have a run under your belt, but they seem pretty confident that, like, if we just train hard, you got the 30 best players in Australia training against each other, you're going to get the quality you want.
Well, what do you train for at the moment? Like, they have data coming out the wazoo, so they know that the longest passage of play is going to be 180 seconds, maybe a bit above that. So that's what you train for. So that's what you're preparing for. You're training for worst case scenarios in training, and you can manufacture it. We're going to fatigue you guys to the point of the worst case you're going to get in the game. So you can get it at training. What you can't get is, I think, and this is my opinion only, but get hit on the shoulder by someone in a Lions game. Am I instinctively going to drive through that contact point and try and score a try? Or you can get overtrained to the point where I get hit, I lose my legs, I go down, and that's oversimplifying it. But when you're playing and you're in form and you've got a body of work behind you for the season, things coming like that. You're not even thinking about it. That's what flow is. That's what all that stuff is. And I think that's what Joe has to, and his team have to consider. How do we get those key players into that state that they can get in? Some that might be training. I know Slips just needs to get through his training work and he'll be there and he'll play his best rugby on those Lions games. For someone else, I don't know who that is in the squad, how much can we play him in these lead-up games?
What about pressure? How do you simulate pressure? Because you can do detail things, you can do phase things, structure things, but pressure is going to be a huge factor in the Test series.
It is, and that's why I cite someone like Bernard Foley. But pressures are what I don't even know how to label the word pressure. It's different to each one of us here. So again, it comes back to that individual plan for each player. How can they deal with the pressure that they'll perceive in that test match as best as possible? The thing that you have to get right, though, is as a team, you're also, kind of a living, functioning thing as well. So the way I deal with pressure might be, might not work for other people. And so as a team, you can work on that a lot. And that's why keeping guys in-house becomes really important. Can you train the pressure that you're going to experience on the field? I talk about, the 180 seconds. Can you fatigue the players and then make them come up with a solution? Yeah. So that's the importance of keeping them together. But yeah, pressure's it's a subjective thing.
The interesting thing is that 100% it's guaranteed to go tits up at some point. Like the first test in Brisbane,
Is that a scientific term?
It is.
Potato?
It is. You ended up playing centre. Gorgum, and you came in as a call-up. You mentioned Gracie there. I don't even think Gracie was meant to play in that game. There was an injury or something. So it's about having confidence in your contingency planning as much as your kind of top-level planning.
Yeah, fascinating. We'll see a little bit more, won't we, tomorrow when Joe Schmidt names his first squad of the year. No doubt it'll feature plenty of stars